The text message came in at 11:47 on a Friday night. I was already in bed, not asleep yet at 63. Sleep doesn't come the way it used to. I was just lying there in the dark, listening to the ceiling fan turn, when my phone lit up on the nightstand. I almost didn't reach for it. Carol was beside me, already breathing slow and even, and I didn't want to wake her. But something made me look. It was from Maya. Not a call, a text. And that alone told me something was wrong, because Maya never texts. She's 9 years old, and she calls me the way kids used to call people, just dials, no warning, launches straight into whatever's on her mind the second I pick up. She once called me 3 times in one afternoon to tell me about a turtle she'd seen near the creek behind her school. So when I saw a text, instead of a missed call, I sat up. "Grandpa, are you awake?" "I don't want to make noise." I typed back immediately. "I'm awake." "What's going on, sweetheart?" 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. I was already sitting on the edge of the bed, feet on the floor. They left. I stared at those 2 words for a moment. Then I called her. She picked up on the first ring, and the sound she made when she said "Grandpa, quiet." Trying so hard to hold herself together, that sound hit me somewhere behind the sternum and didn't let go. "Hey," I said, keeping my voice low and steady. "Hey, I'm here." "Tell me what happened." "They left for Disney," she whispered. "All of them." I woke up, and the house was quiet, and I looked in their rooms, and nobody was there. I pressed my hand flat against my knee. "When did they leave?" "I don't know. Their bags were gone. Biscuit is still here. Biscuit is the family's beagle. They left food out for him, and there's a note on the fridge." "What does the note say?" I heard her moving through the house. Small footsteps on hardwood, then silence while she read. It says, "Mrs. Patterson next door has a key if I need anything." And there's a $20 bill under the note. Her voice didn't break when she said it. That was almost worse than if it had. "Grandpa, why didn't they take me? Did I do something wrong?" I was already standing. On my side of the bed, in the dark, I was on my feet without making a decision to stand. My body just did it. "No," I said. "You did nothing wrong. Nothing at all. Can you do something for me? Can you lock the front door and go sit on the couch with Biscuit until I call you back in a few minutes?" "Okay," she said. Then, very quietly, "Are you coming?" "Just go sit with Biscuit," I said. "I'll call you right back." I hung up and turned on the lamp. Carol was awake. She'd been awake, I think, since the phone lit up 41 years of marriage, and she has a radar for when something's wrong that I've never been able to explain. She was looking at me with that particular stillness she gets, waiting. "Maya," I said. "Daniel and Renee took the kids to Disney World. They left her home." Carol sat up straight. "Alone?" "Alone." She looked at me for exactly 1 second. Then she got out of bed and went to the closet. Let me tell you something about Carol. People who don't know her well sometimes think she's the quiet one, the one who softens my edges, who talks me down from things. And she does do that. But there's another side of her that I have never in 41 years wanted pointed in my direction. She pulled her travel bag down from the shelf without saying a single word, and the silence in that room had a temperature to it. I called Maya back while Carol packed. "Okay, sweetheart, here's what's going to happen. Grandma and I are going to drive down tonight. We're going to be there when you wake up in the morning. I need you to try to get some sleep. All right? Can you do that for me? Can Biscuit sleep in my bed?" "Biscuit can absolutely sleep in your bed." A shaky exhale. "Okay, Grandpa. I love you. We'll be there before breakfast. Don't open the door for anyone. I love you too." I stood in the kitchen with my phone, doing the math. Maya lives with her parents, my son, Daniel, his wife, Renee, and their 2 biological kids, 12-year-old Marcus and 7-year-old Sophie, about 4 hours south of us. If we left within the hour, we'd arrive around 4 in the morning, early. But she wouldn't be alone all night. Then I opened a browser and looked up Disney World. My jaw tightened when I found what I was looking for. I've taken enough vacations in my life to know that when families book Disney, they don't just book the park. They book the resort. I knew which one they'd be at. Daniel had mentioned it 3 months ago at Sunday dinner, letting it drop into the conversation the way he sometimes does with things he's proud of spending money on. The Grand Floridian, 5 nights. He'd made a point of saying the room had a view of the castle. I also knew, because Daniel is nothing if not predictable, that they would have driven down. He doesn't fly with the kids if he can avoid it. 12-hour drive, probably left yesterday afternoon or early this morning, which meant they were already there, already checked in, already settled. Good. That meant I knew exactly where they were. Carol appeared in the kitchen doorway with both our bags. 4 hours, I said. I know, she said. I already put the coffee in a thermos. We were on the highway by 12:30. I should tell you something about Maya, so you understand why that text message got me out of bed the way it did, why Carol packed her bag without asking a single question, why I spent the next 4 hours in the dark on I-75 with my hands on the wheel, feeling a kind of cold, focused anger that I hadn't felt in a long time. Maya came into our family 3 years ago. She was 6. Daniel and Renee had been trying for a third biological child for years, and when it became clear that wasn't going to happen, they went through the adoption process. Long process. Lots of paperwork, home studies, waiting. Carol and I supported them every step of the way. We were there the day they brought Maya home. I still have a photograph from that afternoon. Maya standing in the front doorway of their house, small and a little uncertain, holding a stuffed rabbit somebody had given her, and Marcus standing next to her with his arm around her shoulder like he'd appointed himself her protector on the spot. For the first year, things seemed fine. Maya settled in. She started calling them Mom and Dad. She started calling us Grandpa and Grandma, which she'd been a little shy about at first. She'd had a hard early life. I won't go into the details because they're not mine to share. But suffice to say, she had reasons to be cautious about trusting people, and watching her slowly start to trust our family was one of the most quietly moving things I've ever witnessed. But sometime in the second year, I started noticing things. Little things at first, the way certain conversations would shift when Maya walked into the room. The way birthday presents weren't quite equal, not dramatically, not obviously, but enough that I noticed. And I was watching carefully. The way Renee spoke about our kids sometimes in a way that had an invisible boundary in it. The way Daniel laughed a little too quickly when Maya said something that didn't land the way Marcus or Sophie's jokes did. I told myself I was looking for problems that weren't there. I told myself every family has complicated dynamics. I told myself Maya was adjusting and so were Daniel and Renee, and it took time. Then last Thanksgiving, I watched Maya set the table by herself, while Renee helped Sophie make a craft at the kitchen counter. And I watched Marcus come in from outside and get pulled into the craft project too, and Maya just kept setting the table, carefully placing each fork, and nobody called her over. I said something to Daniel that night, privately, in the garage, while the others were watching football. I kept it measured. I said I'd noticed some things and I wanted to check in. He told me I was projecting. He said Maya was still adjusting and they were figuring out their rhythm as a family. He said it with a patience that was just barely covering irritation. And I recognized the tone. It's the tone he uses when he thinks I'm overstepping. I let it go. I shouldn't have, but I let it go. And now it was 15 inches the morning, and my granddaughter was alone in a house with a beagle and a $20 bill, and her family was 4 hours south checking out the castle view from their hotel window. We pulled into Daniel's neighborhood at 8 inches the morning. Carol had the spare key. We'd had one for years, for emergencies. This qualified. The house was dark. We let ourselves in quietly, and I went straight to Maya's room. She was asleep, biscuit curled up against her legs, the stuffed rabbit from 3 years ago tucked under her arm. I stood in the doorway for a moment, just looking at her. She looked so small. I pulled her door mostly closed and went to the kitchen. The note was still on the refrigerator, $20 bill still underneath it. I read it once. Renee's handwriting. Very practical. Mrs. Patterson's number. The information for their hotel. To their credit, it was there, at the bottom. The Grand Floridian. A room number. I folded the note, put it in my pocket, and left the 20 on the counter. Carol was already making herself comfortable in the guest room. I sat at the kitchen table in the dark with a glass of water, and I thought about what I was going to do. By the time the sun came up, I had a plan. Maya found us in the kitchen at 7:30. She stood in the doorway, in her pajamas, hair sideways from sleep, And when she saw us, when she registered that we were real and actually there, something in her face changed in a way I won't try to describe because I don't think I have the words for it. She crossed the kitchen in about 4 steps, and I caught her, and she held on to me for a long time without saying anything. Then she looked up and said, "You came." "Of course we came," Carol said, from the stove where she'd already started making pancakes from the mix she'd found in the pantry. We had a normal morning, as normal as we could make it. Maya ate pancakes. She showed Carol a drawing she'd been working on a horse. Quite good, actually. She has a real eye for proportion. She took Biscuit out to the backyard. She told me about a book she was reading for school. We did not, that morning, discuss the elephant in the room. Maya was 9, and she was smart, and she knew something was happening that the adults needed to handle, and she seemed to have made a decision to let us handle it while she ate her pancakes. I waited until she was settled in the backyard with Biscuit before I took my phone out and called Daniel. He picked up after 4 rings. I could hear resort sounds in the background, that particular kind of cheerful crowd noise that exists only at theme parks. "Dad? Is everything okay?" "Define okay," I said. A pause. "What do you mean?" "I mean, your daughter called me at midnight because she woke up alone in the house and didn't understand where everyone had gone." Silence. "Then we left a note." "You left a note," I said, "for a 9-year-old, alone in the house. Mrs. Patterson is right next door." "Daniel." I said his name the way I used to when he was 15 and had done something he knew was wrong and was trying to talk his way past it anyway. "Stop. I'm not interested in the logistics of how you manage the situation. I'm calling to tell you that Maya is with me and Carol, and she is fine, and I would like to understand what happened." Another silence. Longer. Then he said, "Can we talk about this when we get back?" "We can talk about it now," I said. "Or I can drive her down to Orlando and we can talk about it in the lobby of the Grand Floridian." "Your choice." He chose now. What came out over the next 20 minutes was this. The trip had been planned for months. It was supposed to be a family trip. Then, 6 weeks ago, there had been an incident at school. Maya had gotten into a conflict with another girl, a conflict that had escalated in a way that required a meeting with the school counselor. Daniel described it as Maya having behavioral issues that were getting worse. He said he and Renee had decided together that Maya needed to stay home and reflect while the family went on the trip as a consequence. He said it like it was reasonable. He said it like it was parenting. I listened to the whole thing without interrupting. When he finished, I said, "So you left a 9-year-old alone overnight as a punishment." "Mrs. Patterson was asleep, Daniel. It was midnight when Maya texted me. Did Mrs. Patterson know Maya might need her at midnight?" He didn't answer. "What exactly did Maya do at school?" I asked. He told me. I listened. What he described was a conflict, a real one. Not trivial, but the kind of conflict that 9-year-olds have, the kind that gets worked through with a counselor and a conversation and some guided reflection. Not the kind that results in a child being left home alone while her family goes to Disney World for 5 days. "And Marcus and Sophie weren't part of this consequence," I said. "They didn't do anything wrong. Neither did Maya," I said, "in any way that justifies what you did. I want you to hear me clearly. Whatever she did at school, and I'm not dismissing it, I'll talk to her about it. It does not justify this. You left her out, again. And this time you dressed it up as discipline so you wouldn't have to look at what it actually was." "Dad, I'm not finished. I've let things go for 2 years because I was trying to respect your parenting and not overstep. I'm done doing that because the way I see it, if you can leave her behind and call it a consequence, you can do it again and again. And that child is going to spend her whole childhood waiting for the next time she gets left behind, wondering what she did wrong, wondering why she isn't enough. And I won't watch that happen." The park sounds continued in the background. Somewhere behind Daniel, I heard Sophie laugh at something. "What do you want from me, Dad?" His voice had shifted. The defensiveness was still there, but underneath it was something else. Something that sounded, if I'm being honest, a little scared. "I want you to come home," I said. "Not 5 days from now. I want you to tell Renee and the kids that you're coming home tomorrow. And I want you to spend the rest of this trip thinking very carefully about what your daughter needs from you. And when you get home, I want there to be a real conversation, not a defensiveness contest, a conversation. Silence. And Daniel, I said, if I have reason to believe that Maya is being treated differently because she isn't biological, not suspected, believed, then I will involve people whose job it is to look into that. I'm not making a threat. I'm telling you what I will do, as clearly as I can. I heard him exhale, long and slow. I'll call you back, he said. He called back 40 minutes later. They were coming home the following morning. Carol was sitting across the kitchen table from me when I hung up, and she looked at me for a moment with that expression I've seen 1,000 times, the one that means she's proud of me for doing something difficult the right way, and also that she would have done it exactly the same way, and it's possible she would have done it faster. Good, she said. We didn't tell Maya the details. We told her that her dad and mom were coming home early, and that we would be there when they arrived, and that things were going to be different. We let her read the room on the rest. She was quiet for a while after we told her, sitting on the back porch with Biscuit in her lap, looking at the yard. Then she asked if we could bake something while we waited. So that afternoon, Carol and Maya baked 2 loaves of banana bread in Daniel's kitchen, and I sat at the kitchen counter and watched them. And Maya stood on the step stool to reach the counter the way she always has to, and Carol let her pour in the vanilla, which is the ceremonial position of honor in any baking Carol has ever supervised. That night, Maya slept in the guest room with Biscuit, and Carol and I stayed in the pull-out in Daniel's office, and I lay awake for a while in the dark, listening to the house breathe, thinking about tomorrow. They pulled in around 2 in the afternoon. I had thought carefully about where this conversation should happen. Not in front of Maya. That was not negotiable for me. And I want to be clear about that, because she had already been through enough, and she did not need to sit in a room while adults argued about her. We had Carol take Maya for a walk with Biscuit about 20 minutes before Daniel's car came up the driveway. It was just me and Daniel and Renee in the living room. Marcus and Sophie were upstairs, aware that something was happening, keeping themselves occupied with screens in the way kids do when they sense tension they aren't equipped for yet. Renee cried. I want to be fair about that, she cried fairly quickly. And I do think it was genuine, and I think somewhere in her she had known this was coming, and maybe had known for longer than she was willing to admit that something had gotten off track. Daniel was quieter than I expected. He'd had a day and a half to think, and it showed. I didn't come in angry. I'd made a decision on the drive down that anger wasn't going to be useful here. What I needed was clarity. I told them what I had observed over 2 years. Not accusations, just what I had seen, in order, with specifics. I told them about Thanksgiving. I told them about the birthday presents. I told them about patterns in the way Maya was spoken about versus how Marcus and Sophie were spoken about. I told them that I understood that attachment takes time, and that parenting an adopted child has complications that parenting biological children doesn't have, and that I wasn't expecting perfection. But I told them there was a difference between imperfect and what had happened this week. She called me at midnight, I said. Not because she was scared of the dark. She called me because she didn't have anyone else to call. That one landed. I watched it land on both of them. Renee said, I know we made a mistake. And I said, this has to be the last one of this kind. We talked for a long time. Real talking, not the kind where people defend positions at each other, but the kind where people actually say what's true. Daniel admitted that he had been struggling to connect with Maya in a way he hadn't anticipated. He said it with difficulty, and I believed him, and I told him that admitting it was the most important thing he could have done in that moment. Renee talked about the school incident, and I told them I understood it had been stressful, and I told them that stress was not a reason, and they both nodded. By the end of it, there was an agreement. Family counseling not suggested, agreed. Specific changes in how family decisions were communicated to Maya. A commitment to include her, not as an afterthought, but from the beginning, and a conversation they were going to have with Maya together that evening, with me and Carol present if Maya wanted us there. Maya wanted us there. She sat on the couch between me and Carol, Biscuit on her feet, while Daniel and Renee sat across from her and said the things they needed to say. I won't transcribe it. It belongs to them. But I will say that Daniel looked his daughter in the eye and told her she was his daughter, not like a daughter, not in our family, but his daughter, full stop, and that he was sorry, and that it was not her fault, not any of it, and that she deserved better. Maya sat very still while he said it. When he finished, she looked down at Biscuit for a moment. Then she looked back up at Daniel and she said, "Can we go to Disney another time? Like actually all of us?" And Daniel, to his very great credit, said yes. That was 6 months ago. Things are not perfect. I want to be honest about that, because stories that wrap up perfectly tend to be lies, and I'm not interested in telling you a lie. There are still moments when I watch, and I pay attention, and I see things I could wish were different. The counselor they're working with has told them and told me, because I've been to a few sessions, which was not my idea, but I'm glad they asked that what they're working through is real and it takes time and it's possible and it's worth doing. Maya is doing well. She's doing better than well, actually. She made a friend at school, a girl named Deja, who comes over sometimes, and the two of them do art projects that take over half the dining room table. Her horse drawings have gotten even better. She still calls me almost every day, usually with no particular reason, launching straight into whatever is on her mind. Last month she called me to tell me she'd found a caterpillar on a leaf in the backyard and was keeping it in a jar to watch it become a butterfly. "Does the jar have holes in the lid?" I asked. "Yes, Grandpa. Very patient with me. I know about the holes. I spent a lot of years in my career as an engineer building infrastructure bridges. Mostly, which people think sounds impressive, but is mostly a lot of calculations and long days in the wind and learning to respect the forces working against you. A bridge doesn't look complicated from the road. You drive over it and you don't think about it. But the work underneath, the work that makes it hold, that's where everything actually happens. That's where you either did the job right or you didn't. I think about Maya sometimes when I'm on a bridge. A family isn't so different, really. The visible part is what people see from the outside, the photos, the holiday dinners, the Disney trips. But the part that actually holds is underneath. It's the daily work of making a child feel that she belongs, that she is counted, that she will not be left behind. Get that part right, and the whole thing holds. Get it wrong, and it doesn't matter what it looks like from the road. She didn't ask me to come that night. She sent a text because she didn't want to wake anyone up, because at 9 years old she was already in the habit of trying not to be too much trouble. That breaks my heart a little, even now. But she sent the text. She reached out. And that means she believed, somewhere underneath everything, that there was someone who would come. I just want to make sure she keeps believing that. For the rest of her life, I want her to know that if she sends that message at midnight, at 2 inches the morning, whenever somebody will be in the car inside the hour, she deserves that. Every kid does.